In today's video, we're going to talk about how to debunk your false beliefs like a scientist. If you don't know who I am, my name is Ege. I'm the founder and CEO at Data-Driven Actualization, where we help analytical men who built a good life on paper also turn their minds into their biggest asset using the RDT loop. The reason I wanted to talk about this with you today is the process of changing your behavior as a way to challenge your belief system is very similar to how we design scientific experiments. So, for example, I remember when I was in high school and we would have to go to science class and mix up some substances, and we would have theories around what would happen, right? We would come up with a hypothesis and we would say, okay, I believe that if I combine these ingredients based on the chemistry that I know, here's what the outcome would be. And the whole experiment wasn't about creating a story of, oh, am I going to predict it? Probably. It was just about seeing what would happen, which is the same process that we talk about when it comes to using behavior to change our belief system. So, first, you can write any belief and a conviction number for that belief. So, for example, when I was helping people with building more social freedom, a lot of guys who had friction around showing interest in women had beliefs like, if I show my interest, if I walk up to a woman and I say, hey, excuse me, I know this is a little bit out of the blue, but I had to tell you, you look beautiful. They're just going to slap me. They're going to run away. They're going to get creeped out, right? So let's take that belief. Let's say I'm a guy with good intentions. I want to find a long-term girlfriend to share my life with. And I don't quite like using dating apps. I maybe have a logical job. I'm a software engineer, so there aren't many women at my work or at my vicinity. And I'm looking for an alternative way to meet women. And I discover, wait, I'm in a city where there's all these women walking around that I could potentially say hello to. But when I think of saying hello to them, what happens is in my head, I just go, no, 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 this is a bad idea. I should never show my interest like that. That would be too much. So the belief that we would be starting with as an example here could be, and we want to make this as concrete as possible, right? What I mean by that is if it's very vague, it's going to be hard to test, which is why I will say, if I tell a woman, I'm going to write down exact words to make it very precise, right? Again, the more precise you write your belief, the easier it is to actually create a behavioral experiment to test it. If I tell a woman, hey, I know this is unusual, but I thought you looked beautiful. Beautiful. And wanted to say hello. So, this could be my belief, again, written down very specifically. Then, my conviction, wait, I haven't finished the belief. Never mind. If I tell a woman, that's funny. If I tell a woman, I know this is unusual, but I thought you looked beautiful and wanted to say hello, she will have a negative response. And again, in our view, a negative response might be frown, ignore me, slap me, or I don't know. This is what's coming up for me right now. So again, as a scientist, we want to be very precise. What are the negative outcomes that we're considering here? And my conviction number of this outcome might be, I am let's say 80% convinced this is what's going to happen. So now what do? I change my behavior, again, not as this magical way of, oh, I'm going to build a new habit and stick to it. We don't want to look at the behavior as another thing that we need to stick to be perfect or to perform at the level that we're used to, right? What we want to do instead is we create a behavior simply to test our belief. So my test might be this. My small test might be, say this to 10 women. Now, the key here is my purpose of saying this is not to even have a good conversation. It's not to get a number. It's not to go on a date. It's simply to test my belief system, which is why I say the same thing every time. So then what we do is we decide, okay, to debunk this belief or to test the strength of this belief against reality, I'm going to go up to 10 women. I'm going to say, hey, I know this is unusual, but I thought you looked beautiful and I wanted to say hello. Then I am going to track the number of times they engage in a negative response, defined by frowning, ignoring me, slapping me, whatever other scenario that you can think of, right? And I personally, when I was in college, and I was pretty afraid to go talk to people, this was an experiment I ran. And out of 10 attempts or 10 engagements in this behavior, I actually got maybe one person who looked a little bit flustered that I just told them they were beautiful out of the blue, right? So the predicted conviction was 80% if we go into step one, step four. So again, we run the experiment, I ran the experiment, and actually 1 out of 10 respond in a negative way. Then we say, okay, my predicted was 80%. Now, I can still say, oh, maybe within that 10 people sample size, I just got really lucky. And actually, maybe half of them in a regular scenario would be likely to behave in this way. So maybe my actual belief charge didn't even drop to 10% from this experiment, but maybe now it just dropped to 50%, right? And this is still a massive change because the thing is, a lot of the time, the beliefs that hold us the most are the most harsh, the most concrete in our head. And when we test them against reality, we realize, and I realized this when, I was really socially anxious and I was trying to get out there, I realized that the outcomes that I predicted in my head were a lot harsher than how people actually responded. And if I went out into the real world and I was honest and I had good intentions and people could clearly see I was doing something difficult for myself, they were so much more compassionate compared to what I projected them to be at the time, right? So this is why behavioral experiments are so helpful. And again, this is not exposure therapy. That's actually been debunked. It's not about staying in the fear until something subsides, which is what exposure therapy is about. It says, okay, you face something that you're afraid of and you stay there until the fear subsides. But actually, what's important is we stay in the experience until our assumption about the situation is debunked, which is what this experiment allows us to see, right? 10 conversations. Oh my God, only once I had a negative response. That's interesting. It seems like the belief I held in my head so tightly isn't actually an accurate representation of reality. What do I do with that? When my unconscious mind sees that, it starts updating my belief system. Now, that being said, I'm not going to treat this as a magical solution. This can be a tool that's pretty well known, and it has limitations, right? What happens is it's easy to change our behavior, but with that behavior, we need to create new sensations, needs, or not create, but just pay attention to. Attention to new feelings. and sensations. So we want our behavior connected to new thoughts, new sensations, new feelings. So that new neural pathway we're creating is solidified in all senses and not just the behavioral sense, right? So that's the first limitation. If we just look at it as, oh, I'm going to change my behavior, but we live with the same thoughts, same feelings, same sensorial experiences in our body, then we just go back to where we were before. The second limitation is if we have a shadow process where we have trouble or we have this thing where we judge ourselves as a perfectionist, right? We say, oh, I engage in this behavior, but still one of the time people respond negatively. That means I cannot do it. That means I failed. Then we actually have a deeper shadow process that is around us taking action. And in order to dive into that, we're going to need to go into the core of that experience and recognize, where did I pick up this perfectionist tendency? So the reason I'm putting this out there is I don't want you to think of this as an end all be all solution. This is just one tool in your toolkit, and using behavioral experiments, you can debunk a lot of beliefs. At the same time, if you use this and you still feel a part of you is stuck, you can check out other content on this channel. But most importantly, you can reach out so I can guide you through this belief change step by step. This is why we have all the tools in the world, yet we still work with mentors, right? So if you enjoy this, there's two options from here. Both of them are free. If you already know which beliefs are holding you back and you're looking for a way to establish a calm baseline in your nervous system, I recommend running our 7-day RDT protocol or 7-day calm protocol. It's a free playbook I prepared for you, and the link for that will be in the description below. The second thing is, if you're watching this and you think, this is really interesting, but I don't know which belief to apply it to, we actually designed a Mind OS quiz that we discovered in terms of like beliefs that analytical men hold after working with over 600 analytical men, right? There are 3 core beliefs that actually prevent analytical men from reaching their full potential and doing what they want in life, and we map them into archetypes. So you take the quiz in 3 minutes, answer 6 questions, you get your result, and you get a 7-day plan specifically rewired for that belief so you can change your life from there. So I hope you enjoyed this. Again, this was just me on my iPad one more time, and I will see you in the next video.